As she said, my name is Pastor James Caldwell. Reverend, pastor, chaplain, father, husband, and patriot. You know, my arrival to this new world really started about 100 years ago, you know, with my family. We started out in France. Religious persecution shoved us out of there. So we headed to Scotland and eventually into Ireland, both of which, with the religious persecution, brought us here to the New World. So let me tell you just a little bit about myself. I was born in the spring, April of 1734. Grew up like many people did at that time on the family farm, you know, performing my chores and doing what I needed to do to survive. But early on I felt that there was more, that there was a calling on my life to do something different than just being a farmer. So I thought it might be a wise thing to learn to read and write. So I set about doing that, ended up in college, and when I graduated college, I landed my first church, the Presbyterian Church of Elizabethtown, New Jersey. And after being there a year, I met my lovely wife, Hannah. And over the next 16 years, we together had 10 children, which was not so uncommon at the time. You know, my ministerial duties there included those things you might suspect from a Presbyterian minister. I'd conduct 2 services on any given Sunday. I'd visit the sick. I conducted weddings and, of course, funerals. I attended to building matters, and I helped plant new churches. From the time I started there at the church in Elizabethtown up until the beginning of the War for Independence, my congregation had grown to a full 345 pew renters. My passion, my faith, and my freedom I highly value. Neither will you snatch away from me. You see, my family's history and that religious persecution I told you about, I started seeing it here in the New World, and I wasn't going to stand for that for a second. So when the musket balls and the cannon fire started, I was ready. At a meeting at the Presbyterian Synod in May that year, I served on a committee that we formally urged the Presbyterian churches to support the rebellion, which they did. But that put a target on our backs as Presbyterian, and especially us ministers. But we were up to that task. Not only behind the pulpit, but out on the battlefield. I was elected chaplain of the 3rd New Jersey Brigade under Colonel Elias Dayton, who just, by the way, happened to be one of my congregants. So in June of 1780, in what was present-day Union, a fierce battle broke out. The British and Hessian troops retreated from the battle, and my lovely Hannah was shot and killed through our bedroom window. That only set my resolve that much more. So any place behind the pulpit or on horseback, I would teach the fight of liberty and freedom to anybody that would listen. On June 23rd, 1780, myself and many other patriots defeated the British at the Battle of Springfield. I know that victory prevented the enemy from getting to Morristown to capture General George Washington. So that and many other staggering defeats at the time, because we had lost South Carolina to General Cornwallis. And the British thought that if they could just muster one more big push, that the victory would be ours. But with my trust in the Lord, along with my faith and a healthy dose of patriotic fortitude, we pressed on. You know, one of the significant turning points was a battle at an apple grove across the Rahway River near Springfield. The Redcoats had moved up and let loose a fury. They had 6 cannons aimed at us, and they tore chunks off the apple trees, and they killed our only artillery gunner. But despite the loss, we bunkered down and just stood our ground and fought the courageous battle. At one point, our soldiers had run out of wadding for their rifles, So I quickly ran into town, grabbed a bunch of hymnals, most of which the songs were written by one Isaac Watts, ran back handing them the hymnals so they could tear them apart to use them for wadding in the rifle. And I said, "Give them Watts, boys." And they did. Ultimately, all we did was delay the attack on Springfield. But it was this strength that we showed by continuing the battle that made the soldiers press on even harder. You know, for myself, I never saw the end of the war, because while I was on assignment to New York, one of our own guys thought that I was a spy and shot me dead. But when I returned home to my hometown, people lined the streets and cried as they buried me next to the church that I had preached in. God bless the USA.